safety is a big impetus for the project.
With some exceptions, here's the gist. The city is taking a 4-lane road, 2 traffic lanes going in each direction, and a 4-foot sidewalk on each side, and turning it into a 3-lane road that is 1 lane going in each direction with a center turning lane that services both directions, along with a 4-foot bike lane on each side and an 8-foot sidewalk on each side. The city calls these sidewalks multi-use pathways. The city says this design is safer for all users. It adds up to about 60 feet across. Some of that space the city still needs to buy.
We're going to need to do sliver acquisitions on property that may be a foot or 2 feet.
Having to buy up such small pieces of land illustrates the fundamental issue. This corridor lacks space.
There's some contingencies built into that.
This is one point the planners explained to the public during an open house they held earlier this month at West High.
If we start widening things out, extending the curbs wider, then we start impacting the businesses. Taking somebody's parking space in front of a business can get very expensive.
Beginning at the north end of the project, Spenard Road at Hillcrest Drive, there aren't as many cars and businesses, so the space issue is relatively easy to deal with. Right now we're driving south on Spenard Road. That's the Franz Bakery there on the right. Many bakery workers park here and jaywalk back and forth across Spenard to get to work. The city is trying to negotiate a land swap. The old bakery lot would become public parking along with some spots dedicated to businesses, and in exchange, the bakery would get this lot, which would be a safer walk to work for employees. As we approach Fireweed Lane, this is where a bigger controversy begins. It's important to note that traffic levels begin to increase here, and this is Stephen Maloney's major concern. That's his dentist office.
I've seen the traffic backed up for a block or two, especially during rush hour. And I'm thinking, well, if that's a block or two during rush hour, then it's going to be 2 or 3 blocks during rush hour if there's just 1 lane.
We don't want any business to be adversely affected by the project.
South of Fireweed, the project begins to take shape. Imagine a center lane here, a traffic lane in each direction, along with bike lanes and extra wide sidewalks, and there's a crosswalk that goes from the old Lamex building to the windmill parking lot. Speaking of parking,
There's a lot of parking in the area, but there's not a lot of dialogue about sharing that parking.
there are a lot more businesses in this area, and space is tight. That's Cafe AK on the right. Currently, they can fit a few cars out front of the restaurant, and no more. And that's the Celestial Suites building up there on the left. Right now, cars in their front lot often need to back out into northbound traffic to leave the store.
When you go to 3 lanes, you can't have that happening. So that parking in front of the building will be prohibited.
When the project is complete, Spenard Road frontage parking throughout this section would mostly go away. Now, before we get to 27th Avenue, let's address bicyclists and pedestrians.
There's a tremendous number of pedestrians in this corridor.
It's our mission to make Anchorage a more bike-friendly city.
That's Lindsay Hyduke.
Yeah.
She's president of Bike Anchorage.
I think there's a lot of room for improvement. I like the direction that it's going. It really shows that the engineers are thinking of all the different users of the roadway, but it's not quite good enough.
For starters, Hyduke doesn't like that the bike lanes are only 4 feet wide.
What the bikeway is on this project is 1.5 feet of gutter and then 2.5 feet extra.
Now remember, this plan has 1 13-foot center lane, 2 11-foot traffic lanes, 2 4-foot bike lanes, and 2 8-foot sidewalks. The sidewalks are meant for all non-motorized traffic, including bicycles.
We don't want it to be a multi-use path. We want it to be for pedestrians.
The multi-use pathways, again, that's prescribed by the area-wide trails plan.
Bikes don't belong on the sidewalks, so the sidewalks don't need to be 8 feet on each side of the road.
That is not going to be suitable for a high-speed bicyclist, and we recognize that.
We've played with the numbers on the right-of-way, and I think that you could have a 5-foot bike lane and add some protection.
Where does that space come from?
From decreasing the width of the sidewalks.
Eileen Collins doesn't want it that way. She lives nearby and walks.
I think we should both have what we want. We can have a bikeway, a dedicated bike lane, a dedicated roadway for cars, and a dedicated space for people to walk. I don't want to have bikes on the sidewalk. They don't belong there. They belong in their own special on the road.
So where's the space going to come from?
I'm sure our lanes don't need to be as wide as they are.
Unfortunately for pedestrians and bikers, Smith says no to narrowing the traffic lanes.
We're at the minimum widths.
Back to 27th Avenue and our approach to Spenard's big moneymaker.
I think everybody recognizes that the Beartooth is a great business. It's also a tremendous generator of traffic.
The sudden increase of traffic here means 3 lanes on Spenard aren't enough.
We are transitioning from a 3-lane back to a 4-lane between Benson and Northern Lights.
2 lanes in each direction because this area sees the highest traffic volume and, coincidentally, the least flexible space. Notice on the right, the sidewalk butts right up against REI. And on the left, there's tight parking. Here, Spenard would look very much like it does now, except there'd be a concrete median to prevent illegal left turns.
If we're not able to progress traffic through the signals at Fireweed, Northern Lights, and Benson, you will see a systematic, incremental backing up of traffic. We just can't have that.
And the bike lanes disappear completely. What are bikes supposed to do at that point?
That's a good question. We don't have a satisfactory answer to for the bicycle people.
They encourage bicyclists to go on the sidewalk. And if you're a more experienced bicyclist, the engineers say, oh, well, you'll probably continue in the road, which is exactly how it is right now.
The concrete barriers in front of Photo Avenue would go away, and the street would reopen, right before the end of the project, just south of Benson. Planners and engineers still want input to tweak the design, and there are plenty of opinions.
Major concern is traffic and how it's going to redirect traffic in and around that area.
Everybody has to share the road. It's not just for cars.
We're trying to meet the needs of all stakeholders, but clearly the largest volume of users is vehicles. But at the same time, what we're proposing is a great enhancement for the non-motorized user, whether you're a pedestrian, a bicyclist, or somebody pushing a baby stroller. This is going to be much safer, much more user-friendly.